The first thing I saw when I stepped out of the corner store that morning was Karen, standing in the middle of the parking lot, like she owned the asphalt. One hand clutching her phone and the other stabbing the air in my direction. The second thing I noticed was her voice high, sharp, dripping with the kind of false authority that makes your skin crawl. "Yes, 911? I'm reporting a stolen vehicle," she was saying. Her eyes locked on me as though I'd just driven off with the crown jewels. My pulse slowed, not sped up. I knew that tone. I'd heard it too many times in my 23 years wearing a badge. This wasn't about a stolen car. This was about me, a black man behind the wheel of a sleek, white Range Rover she thought couldn't possibly belong to me. I set the grocery bag on the hood, taking my time, watching her like a hawk watches a mouse that thinks it's in control. "Ma'am," I said evenly, "this is my car." She didn't blink. "No, it's mine. I've seen it parked in my neighborhood for months." I tilted my head. "Your neighborhood?" She lifted her chin like she was reciting scripture. "Oakwood Estates. Everything inside the gates is HOA property." Her voice dropped lower, more venomous. "Including this vehicle." The absurdity almost made me laugh, but I could see the tension in the shoulders of the couple walking past, the way they hurried to their car without looking at me. I knew how quickly this could turn ugly if the responding officers didn't know who they were dealing with. Karen wasn't done. "He's aggressive," she said into the phone, loud enough for the entire parking lot to hear. "Yes, I feel threatened. Please send someone fast." The choice in that moment was simple. Let this play out and risk being treated like a suspect, or end it before it spiraled. I reached into my jacket slowly, deliberately, and pulled out my badge, holding it up so the sunlight caught the gold. "Sheriff David Carter," I said, my voice carrying just enough steel to cut through her theatrics. "And unless you've got a warrant, you're going to want to hang up that phone." For a split second, the mask cracked. Her eyes widened, the smug curl of her mouth faltering before she quickly composed herself. "You could have just said that," she sniffed, lowering the phone but not ending the call. "This is still suspicious. I'm the HOA president, and I have the right to question." That's when the twist arrived, in the form of a black and white patrol car pulling into the lot, one I recognized instantly. Behind the wheel was Deputy Marcus Jones, my oldest friend from the academy, and from the look on his face as he stepped out, he'd already gotten the whole story over dispatch. "Karen Whitfield?" Marcus said, his tone halfway between disbelief and irritation. "You just called 911 on the county sheriff for driving his own registered vehicle." Karen blinked rapidly, her confidence slipping. I didn't know who he was." Marcus glanced at me, and I could see the question in his eyes. "Do you want to handle this now or later?" I chose now. "Marcus, could you confirm for the record who owns this vehicle?" He didn't hesitate. "Registered to Sheriff David Carter. Clear title. Insured. No liens." I folded my arms. "And could you also confirm whether an HOA president has any jurisdiction over a county-owned roadway or private property off their gated community?" His lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "No jurisdiction whatsoever." The parking lot had gone silent except for the soft rumble of engines idling. Karen's face flushed deep crimson, her fingers twitching at her side. "I was just looking out for the community," she muttered, her gaze dropping to the ground. But she wasn't looking out for anyone. She was trying to put me in my place, the way she'd probably done to countless others without a badge to protect them. What she didn't know, and what Marcus was about to make clear, was that she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. "Ma'am, filing a false police report is a crime," he said, pulling out his notepad. "And using 911 to target someone without cause? That's misuse of emergency services." Her head snapped up. "You're arresting me?" He didn't answer right away, just looked at me. I could have said no. I could have let her walk away with a warning. But I thought about all the people who didn't get to walk away from encounters like this, people who didn't have the shield I had. "Yes," I said finally. "Book her." The shock on her face was almost theatrical. She sputtered, looking around the lot for support that wasn't there. Marcus read her rights as another deputy arrived to take her statement, and I retrieved my groceries from the hood of my car, placing them gently on the passenger seat. By the time I started the engine, Karen was in the back of the patrol car, still talking, still insisting this was a misunderstanding. But the thing about misunderstandings is they don't usually come with a paper trail, and Karen had just made one for herself in glorious time-stamped audio. Over the next 2 days, I learned more about her than I ever wanted to. Calls came in from residents of Oakwood Estates, each with a story. A delivery driver who'd been blocked at the gate because his truck didn't meet HOA aesthetic standards. A landscaper who'd been accused of lurking when he stopped to eat lunch in his own van. And the worst, a 16-year-old black boy who'd been forced to empty his backpack in front of her and 3 board members because she thought he looked like trouble for walking home from the bus stop. It became clear that my incident wasn't an accident, it was a pattern. And this time, her pattern had crossed someone who had the means, the authority, and the determination to end it. 2 days after the arrest, I was in my office at the sheriff's department when the county prosecutor, Angela Reed, knocked on my door with a file under her arm. "David," she said, sliding it onto my desk. "Your Karen isn't just facing misuse of emergency services. We've got a pattern here. Multiple complaints, all involving false reports or harassment, and a few racial in nature." She paused just long enough for the weight of that last phrase to land. Flipping through the file, I saw sworn statements from at least a dozen people. Angela leaned on the desk. "We're pursuing misdemeanor charges on the false report and harassment, but I'm also recommending civil rights violations under the state code. You okay being a witness?" I didn't even have to think. "Absolutely." The hearing was set for 3 weeks later. Karen, true to form, walked into court wearing a sharp navy pantsuit and an expression that screamed, "I'm still in charge here." She had a lawyer now, a young guy who looked like he'd pulled the short straw at his firm, and as soon as the judge called us to order, Karen was whispering in his ear with quick, stabbing hand gestures. The prosecution started with the 911 call, playing the recording for the whole courtroom. Karen's voice filled the air, firm and confident as she declared the car stolen and me threatening her. Then the clip ended and Angela stood. "Your Honor, the owner of the allegedly stolen car is the sheriff of this county, present in this courtroom. He will testify." I stepped up, took the oath, and recounted the events: how I'd come out of the store, how she insisted it was her car, and how she called 911 even after I identified myself. I kept my tone even, but I didn't sugarcoat the intimidation in her voice, the way she leaned on her title as HOA president like it was a badge of its own. When it was her lawyer's turn to cross-examine, he tried to paint her as a concerned citizen. "Sheriff Carter, isn't it possible my client was merely mistaken about the ownership?" I held his gaze. "A mistake ends when the truth is presented." She heard it and she kept going. "That's not concern. That's willful disregard." Then came the twist. Angela called Marcus, my deputy friend, as a witness, but she didn't just ask him about the arrest. She introduced video from his body cam. The footage showed Karen's expression when I flashed my badge, the way her tone sharpened when she insisted on jurisdiction she didn't have, and the killer blow her muttered words to herself when she thought no one was listening. "Not in my neighborhood. Not in my HOA." The judge leaned back in his chair. "Ms. Whitfield, do you care to explain that?" Karen's lawyer shifted uncomfortably, whispering furiously in her ear, but she just stared ahead, lips pressed thin. Angela closed with a simple point. "This isn't about a car. This is about abuse of authority, targeting based on prejudice, and wasting the time of emergency responders for personal vendettas." The verdict came swiftly. Guilty on all misdemeanor counts, plus a $7,500 fine and mandatory community service. But the real damage was in the civil judgment that followed. Karen was barred from holding any leadership role in an HOA for 10 years and ordered to complete bias training approved by the court. Walking out of the courthouse, I thought that would be the end. But the neighborhood wasn't done with her. In the weeks after, more residents came forward with stories of her overreach, and a few filed civil suits of their own. The HOA board called for a special election, and for the first time in years, Oakwood Estates had a president who wasn't Karen or one of her allies. The day they took down her nameplate from the board office, I drove past the community gate. Karen was standing there with 2 cardboard boxes, her bun slightly crooked, watching as a maintenance worker removed the brass plaque that had read President. Oakwood HOA. She didn't see me, but I saw the slump in her shoulders, the absence of that stiff, commanding posture she'd carried like a shield. Back at the department, Marcus wandered into my office with 2 cups of coffee. "You know," he said, "most folks wouldn't have pushed this far. They'd have let her walk away with a warning." I sipped my coffee, watching the steam curl upward. That's the problem. She's had too many warnings. This was about making sure she doesn't get another chance to ruin someone else's day or their life. Over the next few months, I noticed something shift in Oakwood Estates. The delivery trucks rolled through without hassle. Kids played at the park without being interrogated. The air felt lighter, like the whole place had been holding its breath for years and finally exhaled. One Saturday morning, I got an invitation to a neighborhood barbecue. The new HOA president handed it to me personally, grinning. "We wanted to thank you for standing up, for not letting her scare you off." At the event, I saw people laughing together, folks who'd barely made eye contact before. Even Leonard, the retired postal inspector, was there, swapping stories with the landscaper she'd once accused. Before I left, a group of kids ran up and asked to see my badge. I knelt down, let them hold it, and told them what I wish someone had told me at their age. This isn't just metal, it's a promise. To protect, to stand up, to speak out when something's wrong even if it's uncomfortable. Now, every time I park the Range Rover outside that store, I glance at the spot where Karen once stood, phone in hand, convinced she could decide who belonged and who didn't. That patch of asphalt is just another piece of pavement now. No drama. No ownership battles, number 911 calls. And I'll leave it to you, reader. Was I right to have her arrested and push for the full weight of the law, or should I have let her walk away with just the sting of embarrassment?